Hey everybody, welcome. So I'm very excited to welcome you to our corporate visit today. And this one is hosted by Jennifer Gilliman. So Jennifer is one of our alums, and she is also part of the Organizational Leadership Network. And so that's part of the group of group of alumni who create opportunities for students in the area of org leadership. And so thank you also, Jennifer, for serving on our alumni board and for that, and bringing this presentation to us. So before we get started, the only other thing I'll say is that if there are any of you who have corporate visits you'd like to see happening, or people you'd like to meet via this method that we've been doing in times of COVID, let us know and we'll work on arranging those. Or if you're an alum who wants to host one, please let us know. And Jennifer's going to kick off the presentation. If you guys have questions as they're going through the presentation, feel free to put them in the chat. And then at the end, there will be a chance for you guys to have Q&A as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'll go ahead and introduce Terry Hildebrandt to you all. So Terry was the previous director of the evidence-based coaching program I was involved with through Fielding Graduate University in Santa Barbara. He's a certified executive coach, holds a Ph.D. in human and organizational systems, and is the founder of Terry Hildebrandt Associates. Prior to starting his own company in 2008, he worked at Hewlett-Packard for 22 years in several management and engineering roles. He also works with the MECO Leadership Institute as a master certified coach, and recently published a book called Innovations in Leadership Coaching Research and Practice. His company offers executive coaching, personality assessments, team development, training, and coaching supervision for coaches and leaders who are looking to maximize their potential, as well as best serve their clients and organizations. And Terry, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. It's a pleasure to be here today with all of you. And I'm really passionate about coaching. I've been doing coaching now 23 years. So I've seen it change a great deal over those 23 years. It's been a relatively new industry that only, even in the earliest days, you could say it's about 35 years old, but really established about 25 years ago. So I've seen it change, and it's become quite a popular modality now of development for leaders and as well as executives in the coaching space. Also includes life coaching for people who are looking to improve their life. And I thought I would start out with the formal definition, just for those who may not have heard of coaching before and may be new to it. But the ICF is the International Coaching Federation, which is the largest body of credentialing for coaches. It's kind of like the APA for coaching, if you know the American Psychological Association. Well, ICF is similar to that for coaches. And they define coaching as partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. So there's a few key words here. One is partnering, and coaching is always about a partnership of equals. It's intended to be a helping profession in the sense that the coach really supports the client in reaching whatever goals they bring to the particular session of coaching. So unlike training, which is really geared to teach people a specific skill set, coaching is more about helping the client come up with their own answers. So it's what we call a client-centered approach, as opposed to teaching, which the professor or instructor brings their own agenda. In coaching, the coachee, or client as we call them, brings the agenda, and then the coach provides support for the client to achieve their results, whether those be professional or personal. And I always say all executive coaching is also life coaching, in the sense that executives have lives too, right? There's going to be things that come up for you as a leader that affect your leadership ability, which may be more life-oriented, like work-life balance or challenges, working at home with children and being an educator and child care provider and an employee all at the same time, especially in these COVID days. We find that life coaching and executive coaching and leadership coaching are becoming more integrated in many ways. The ICF goes on to say that professional coaching is an ongoing professional relationship. And what they mean by that is it is a paid profession, whether it be through providing coaching internally. Many HR folks provide coaching in their companies, or externally, like myself. I'm an external coach, and people sometimes hire me directly, or their companies will contract with me and pay me to coach their employees and leaders. And this coaching really helps people produce extraordinary results in their lives, careers, businesses, and organization. So you can see the context is very broad. And through that process of coaching, clients deepen their learning, improve performance, enhance their quality of life. So it's very broad in many ways. These are what we call evidence-based coaching. I'm particularly trained in, as well as have trained others in evidence-based coaching, which relies on these 4 pillars of theories, traditions, and tools. There are underlying theories that come from many of the root disciplines of coaching, and you can see a few of them listed here: neuroscience, humanistic psychology, adult development, adult learning, communication, leadership theory, org theory. I know many of you already are studying these topics yourself, so you may be familiar with some of these in your MBA program. With coaching, we take all that knowledge and expertise and then combine it with core coaching skills. So to become a coach, you do need to learn the tricks of the trade, and the ICF has identified what they call core competencies in coaching, which include things like listening and asking questions and designing action and measuring outcomes and presence, etc. Along with that, the coach needs to learn how to use their use of self, or what we sometimes call self as instrument, through deeper self-awareness, being able to distinguish the coach's issues versus the client's issues, especially around transference and countertransference, the capacity to self-correct in the moment in working with clients, integrity and ethical coaching behavior. And the ICF has a core set of ethics that the certified ICF coaches abide by. Europe has additional bodies. If you might be located in Europe, you'll find other coaching organizations such as the European Mentoring and Coaching Council, which also has a set of ethics. And then lastly, as I mentioned before, everything about coaching is client-centered. So a deep knowledge of the developmental level of the client, the goals and vision of the client, their context, what their life situation, what's going on in their world, what role are they playing, who are their key stakeholders, their personality, values, motivators, and then of course skills, strengths, and areas for growth. All these feed together to create an effective coaching engagement. So in many ways, every coaching engagement is different. Although there are a few general phases that you find in coaching, if you think about these as big process steps, all coaching engagements start with some kind of contracting, understanding how long the program should be, what the main topics are going to be, what kind of goals the client has set out, whether there's HR involvement or the direct manager's involvement. Usually there's some kind of assessment. I'm a fan of assessments and personally certified in 30 different tools that I will use at different times, but they usually consist of at least one good personality tool and then a 360 or some kind of performance feedback on leadership skills. Usually there's a development plan that's created that documents what the client is interested in accomplishing, along with some measures of success that are co-created between the client and the coach. And then the largest phase is implementation, where once you have a plan which serves as a roadmap for the rest of the program, the client is focused on going out and experimenting, trying new things, bringing those results back into the coaching conversation and learning from both their successes and maybe mistakes, and then going out and repeating to learn more until they really master whatever skill or development area that they're focusing on. And then of course it wraps up with reflection, evaluation, and then ultimately closing out the program. So I do want to talk a little bit next about some pre-planned questions that Jennifer and I have thought through for you. And the rest of today is a Q&A, more interview style approach. And we encourage you to put your questions that you may have in the chat room. So if you've never used Zoom before, you can click on chat and you'll see a window will pop up. And feel free to write your questions down as Jennifer and I go through some of our pre-prepared questions.
Wonderful. So can you provide us with a brief definition of exactly what executive and leadership coaching is?
Absolutely. So to build on the general definition of coaching, which is this creative partnership, when you look at leadership and executive coaching, it tends to focus more in the business context. And it's usually centered around developing leadership skills. And there are some really great 360 assessments out there. And 360 means a 360-degree feedback, where you might go and ask your boss how you're doing, what are some key areas for growth, your direct reports, as well as other partners and colleagues, and identify a handful of things you might want to work on. So more often than not, leadership coaching is helping you develop your leadership. And it's a highly customized learning experience. Unlike a class that you might take, which may be very broad and cover a lot of leadership topics, coaching is going to center in on probably 3, at most 5. Oftentimes 3 is kind of that magic number of key leadership skills or competencies that you really want to either develop or enhance, or maybe even fix some weaknesses that you might have, or some gaps that could be holding you back from your next promotion.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And let's see, how would an executive hire a coach?
Great question. So there's 2 main ways that people go about hiring a coach. Many companies, if you work for an organization that sponsors your coaching, in other words, they're paying for it, they'll usually have a list of coaches that are already pre-approved that you can choose from. Most organizations will allow you to interview or get to know 2 or 3 of those coaches and then choose from that list. The advantage of that is that usually HR has a pretty good feel for what it takes to be a great coach and what are some of the qualifications. So that makes life a little bit easier if you are able to choose from a predefined list. If you are not having it sponsored and you're paying out of your own pocket or investing in yourself, then it's a little more complex. One of the things that I recommend is that you choose a coach who has been credentialed or at least has some kind of formal training as a coach. There are generally 2 major categories of coaches out there. One are previously retired executives that may have a lot of experience leading, but may or may not have been trained as coaches. And they tend to provide a lot of mentoring, but they don't really do coaching. And mentoring is more about kind of showing people the ropes, or telling them how they did it, sharing a lot of their own personal experience. A true professional coach doesn't share as much of their own experience. They tend to ask questions to bring out of the client their experiences and try to help them sort out what's appropriate for them. And that process requires some training. And the International Coaching Federation, or the ICF, is one good place to go look for that trained coaches. There's certainly other places as well, but that's a good starting point. Secondly, no matter who you're working with, whether it's an experienced executive that's doing more mentoring or a true professional coach, you definitely want to meet with them and ask them about their experience, their focus areas that they have been successful with in the past, so that you can definitely choose someone that's going to be familiar with what you're working on and help you through that process.
Wonderful. How would you become a coach, and what would you expect from a coaching career?
Great. So many of you on the call may want to become a professional coach yourself, or maybe, which is true for a lot of our students at the Fielding Graduate University, they want to add coaching as part of their toolbox as executives or leaders or attorneys or marketing people or HR folks. Many leaders now are adding coaching as a kind of a fundamental skill. But if you're also looking to become a professional coach yourself, it's important to, like I said before, go get trained first, get the skills training that you need, and then after that, decide what kind of client you want to work with. Do you want to focus on brand new managers just coming out of, being promoted? Do you want to work with more senior leaders? And a lot of that will depend upon your own background. Obviously, a really senior leader is probably going to want to hire somebody who has a little more experience, but a first level manager might be a perfect fit for you. Someone who has, you may have been a manager at the first level yourself and can really support someone through that transition. Or maybe you're an expert in a specific area and someone's looking for coaching in a specific area like ADHD coaching. That's a particular form of wellness coaching or organizational coaching or conflict management or communication. All of these you can have some deep experience with and really set yourself apart as a coach.
Wonderful. Thank you. Let's see, how has COVID affected the coaching industry?
It's really changed some of it a lot, and others places not so much. The places it's changed a lot is obviously face-to-face coaching isn't happening as much as it used to right now. People had to go to Zoom, and I would say the majority of coaches are very familiar with Zoom and comfortable with it. I certainly have been using Zoom as a methodology since Zoom first came out. Before that, I was using GoToMeeting. So I've been using virtual meetings for my clients for a long time. But I think for some coaches that's new, and they were used to lots of face-to-face sessions. So that's been a big shift. And then it's also in some ways hurt certain types of coaching. I had a number of clients that would kick off a development program, a leadership development program with some face-to-face sessions, and then follow it up with coaching, which is really common right now. Coaching is a great way to reinforce learning and many universities are using it that way. So the fact that the face-to-face got delayed meant that the coaching got delayed. So that did create a challenge for me with some of my clients. But at the same time, some of my other clients decided to implement coaching as a way for people to cope with COVID. So I've had a lot of what they call in the moment or transitional coaching. They've been shorter programs, but very focused on all the change that people have had to deal with. Either dealing with challenges of leading virtual teams, that's been a really common coaching program right now, or dealing with the challenges of managing multiple demands such as childcare and elder care, and as well as managing and doing Zoom calls all day at home in a crowded environment. So all of those have created opportunities for people to receive coaching as a way to manage through those transitions. So I've gotten actually a lot of new business as well. So some businesses dropped off, other business got delayed, and then a bunch of new opportunities surfaced because of COVID-19.
Wow. Okay. And what's one thing that you wish you would have known prior to starting your own business?
I think the biggest thing is just how important marketing is when you have your own company. I mean, I knew it was, but I was kind of going in naive because I had worked in marketing in the corporate arena. But it's very different, right, when you have an entrepreneurial business, and obviously coaching is entrepreneurial almost by nature. And the industry itself is designed around partnerships. So understanding how important it was to partner with other coaches, because it's not that uncommon for one coach to get a contract and then gather up their friends to deliver it. And the same coaches might be going after the same program, and this time I might get the contract, next time my friend might get it, but nonetheless we'll all work together, right, to deliver that contract. So that is often how that would work. So there's a great deal of partnering, and you might call it gig economy. You know, coaching was founded on the gig economy, so they're very familiar with that from its beginning. Because usually it's unusual for organizations to hire a full-time coach with that as a job title. It's becoming a little more common. There are a few organizations that have coaches on their payroll, but it's mostly part-time gig work with a lot of independent contractors coming together to deliver larger coaching contracts with organizations and government and nonprofit and education.
Okay. And it looks like Jamie's asking, what is the difference between a coach and a mentor?
Great question. So mentors are mostly about sharing their experience and expertise. So it's a little bit, the apprentice model is based on the mentoring model, right? Where you've got a more experienced mentor that then kind of shows the less experienced person the ropes, so to speak, or how things are done here or how to be successful. Mentors do sometimes coach. So there is some overlap, obviously. A really great mentor knows how to also coach, but the primary focus is sharing expertise and their experience, where a coach doesn't have to know anything actually about the job of the coachee. A professional coach who's trained well can do a great job with almost anyone. Obviously, they'll have maybe move a little bit faster in an industry that they have some knowledge of, but it technically isn't required because the process of coaching itself is kind of doesn't depend upon your experience of being an employee in that industry. So that's one of the reasons. If you look at my own bio, I've worked in, I've had my own personal experience in high tech, which I have a lot of clients in high tech, but I also have a lot of clients in healthcare. I've never been a nurse or a doctor or physician, or administrator in healthcare, but I work with some very senior healthcare leaders across the globe, and have a lot of success there because I don't have to be a physician or a healthcare expert to be a coach in that space.
Thank you. Debbie's asking, what is your advice for someone who is just starting a personal and professional coaching business?
The main thing is to get trained. So make sure you have your own training as a professional coach. So once you have that training, then I would say get clear on who you want to work with. You know, who's your ideal client. There's so many different niches, as you might imagine, right? The two big, are life coaching, which is more on the kind of personal side, such as relationships or dating or weight loss or, all kinds of things around that, which are more life coaching topics. And then, or you can go into the executive/leadership space, which does require some knowledge of leadership, obviously, to understand what the core competencies are of leadership. So that's a big decision too. What kind of a client do I want to work with, and then what kind of topics am I interested in? Where do I want to focus?
Wonderful.
And then get marketing training.
Marketing, yeah.
Get marketing and sales training.
Let's see, Steven's asking, what would a coaching plan consist of, and how are they created or attained by the coach to use with clients?
Was that a coaching plan?
Yes, what would it consist of?
Great. So usually a coaching plan consists of a handful of key objectives, like what do you want to work on together with your coach? And those can be any number of things, right? For leadership coaching, it tends to be one of the leadership competencies, such as, developing direct reports or communication or political savvy or, any number of classic leadership skills that you might want to develop. But it could be beyond that. If you're doing life coaching or a mix of executive and leadership and life coaching, it might be losing weight. It might be health and wellness topics. It could be stop smoking. It might be get promoted, right, and career development. So there's just so many different possibilities, but first step is, what do you want to work on? What are your key objectives? Second phase is, what would success look like if you achieve those objectives? So what's your vision of success? Really important. And then the specific actions that you're going to take to achieve each of your goals or objectives. I also like to add measures of success. So how do you know and track your success along the way? So at the end of your program, you'll be able to determine your progress and how you were able to learn all of the different things you needed to learn along the way. So I'd like to also track learning and progress, as well as your success stories.
Wonderful. Randy is asking, how will the recent events, pandemic, social unrest, impact executive coaching in the next few years?
Yeah, so I think it's going to continue to be virtual. That's obvious, but we're stating, right? And I think that's a good thing, because it gives both clients and coaches more opportunities. You know, I work with people globally, have for a long time, but that's because I'm very comfortable using video. So I think more and more clients are going to adopt video, because really they had to in the COVID world, and now they're realizing that it's really good enough, and maybe even better in some ways than face-to-face coaching, because it gives us all more flexibility. We don't have to travel. It gives us more flexibility for changes at the last minute if we need to. And it's cheaper, right? You're saving a lot of money on not having to pay for the travel for the coach. Lastly, it's eco-friendly, right? Not having to get on airplanes and take away from natural resources. You know, that's another big benefit. So I think we're going to see video coaching to remain. I think the other impact that I'm seeing is more interest around racial development and understanding equity for all kinds of issues, but especially anti-racism. That's been a topic, a really popular topic in coaching right now. A lot of folks are wondering how to become a more equitable workplace, and leaders are focusing on that. I suspect also remote learning and remote development, remote management, remote wage administration and evaluation. All of these topics have been really popular, you know, since COVID has come forward. And those topics existed before, because there have always been remote management and distributed teams, but there's a lot more of it now than there has been in the past. I've been used to doing remote management for 18 years myself, so it wasn't a new topic for me, but it was a great opportunity to coach in that area. Now that people are forced to do it, where before they really had a choice whether they wanted remote employees. Now they, in many cases, have no choice in doing so, and are seeing the value of it as well, giving them opportunity to hire people that maybe wouldn't be able to travel or live in a really expensive area. Now they can have employees anywhere, really, in the U.S. that they have access to a much broader labor pool. So there's a lot of benefits to it.
Wow. Okay, and Debbie's asking, what is the general rate certified coaches charge individuals and organizations?
Yeah, so there are research studies on this topic, and there's a difference in price between life coaching and executive and leadership coaching. So the recent study that was done by CoachSource says that the average price for executive and leadership coaching varies between like $250 and $300 per hour, although a lot of people don't charge per hour. They will do a standard package with a certain number of sessions or a certain length of time. So coaching has a huge variation. Everything from life coaching, which I've seen advertised for as low as $85 an hour. That's probably the lowest of the low end. I would say even life coaching, the average rate is about what you would pay a clinical psychologist, you know, roughly 120, 125 an hour, where probably the average price of executive and leadership coaching at the low end is about 300 an hour.
Thank you.
But it can go up to, it's not that unusual for it to be 700 or 800 an hour if you have a, like a 6-month packaged program.
Sounds like some good money.
Of course,
David,
you're not doing it 40 hours a week though.
right. True.
Yeah.
David is asking, can you give some answers to the problem of being a young coach? How do you show your skills, and are official coaching certificates definitely indispensable?
So I would say for someone who's newer into coaching, having the certificates or credentials definitely get you started, right? Because many of the coaching programs that are really geared toward newer coaches, like Better Up and Ace Up, and there's lots of what we might call coaching for the masses, and they're making coaching available slightly lower rates, but at higher volume, right? And a lot of newer coaches are getting their experience at these kind of organizations. So the hourly rate is lower, but the requirements aren't quite as stringent. But many of them do still require that you be a certified coach. So getting the certified coach credential done, and then building some experience at one of these organizations that is really doing coaching in a broader way for like first and second level managers is a great way to get started. And there's a long list now, probably of 20 of these organizations that hire coaches as a way to get started. Yeah.
Great. Medina is asking, can you please share an example of a coaching process gone wrong, i.e. what do you see as the biggest mistake coaches might make, and do you have any telling examples?
The toughest one is when an HR department does a big program and they kind of make mandatory coaching as part of their standard requirement for all new leaders, for example. And many of those new leaders may not see the need for it or the value of it, or they will go through the motions but cancel a lot at last minute, or not do their homework, so to speak. In other words, coaching is intended to have an opportunity for people to try new things back in the workplace. But if they're so busy or not really committed to it, the coaching sessions end up devolving into training. And I've had a few clients like this where they'll come to the session, well, I didn't have time to do anything since we met last month, and I don't really have anything to talk about today, but maybe you could teach me something. That's how it gets started. Mm-hmm. and I know this is not going to be a good session. Right? Yeah. So I'll do my best, right, to say, well, did anything come up for you, in the last month that maybe was a little challenging, or a real life example of an issue that you've dealt with? No, nothing really. Everything's fine. It's like, okay, well, let's talk about a tool. Yeah. But then I end up moving into teaching mode, and I'll tell them, hey, I can move into teaching mode, but this isn't really coaching. If sometimes I'll cancel the session and say, well, why don't we wait until you have something that you really want to talk about?
Wow. Okay. And David's asking, what is your standpoint about the growth of influencers on social media and their impact as coaches? Are they true competitors?
Well, I think influencers are interesting, right? In the sense that some people are doing that really to gain exposure and visibility for themselves, and they may or may not be experts. There's a difference between someone who kind of talks a lot about what's going on in the world versus actually bringing content, right? Yeah. So I think it depends on how that influencer is showing up and how they maintain their own following. So there's influencers, and then there's influencers, right, that are, not really bringing substance. But I think a lot of coaches are, I think, in some ways trying to sell themselves as influencers by focusing in on a very specific topic that they have some expertise in. And in a way, they're not really coaching, right? They're bringing their experience. So they're really teaching and bringing awareness when they are in that mode. So influencing is not coaching, right? Those are different modalities. But if you want to build your brand and be known as a coach who does a lot in a specific area, it may be a strategy for marketing that could work. And I certainly did that when I was at Fielding. I wanted to be known as the guy who brought cutting edge coaching research to the market, and we did that. We brought in the leading researchers in this space and had twice a month videos, much like we're doing today here with you guys. I did those myself for my university, and all those are on the web, right, for people to go listen to if they want to learn. But that's a form of influence and becoming known for something that you're bringing value to the table, as opposed to bringing gossip, right?
Yeah.
Which some influencers are really more gossip mongers, right? And kind of creating buzz around whatever the latest trend is.
Good point. Debbie asks, what is the name of the certified executive coaching program you recommend?
Well, there's many programs out there, and one place to find them is on the International Coaching Federation website. The ICF accredits these programs, and that's one place to go look. Given that, though, there's three big ways of thinking about these programs. So there's what I call the trade schools. A trade school is, like, let's say I wanted to go create a coach training school. I could do that and hang out my shingle, but I wouldn't be associated with any other organization. It would just be a for-profit trade school. And there's quite a few of those. That's probably the largest number of coach training programs, is someone who has been coaching for a while and decided they want to train other coaches. The second classification of training programs is what I would call guru programs, and they're usually named after the guru. And this is not a bad thing. It's just that their main strategy is creating mini-me's, people that are going to use their techniques that they have found useful. And these could be very powerful, gurus in the coaching world that have, definitely been successful. But the reason you would likely go to one of those is to be part of that person's network or to leverage their marketing. And there are a few of those programs out there, and they're usually named after the famous person that founded it. The third set of schools are universities or colleges, and the program I ran out of the Fielding Graduate University was called Evidence-Based Coaching, and it was one of those university-based programs where you get not only your training as a coach, but you also earn academic credit, that you can use toward a master's or PhD or EDD program. So it depends on what your goals are. If you're just looking to learn from a guru program might be perfect. If you're looking to just get the credential and don't care about the academic side, maybe a trade school would be fine. But if you're wanting a more robust, both theoretical as well as skills development, and maybe have interest in leveraging that to an advanced degree, I would recommend one of the academic-based programs, like Fielding or University of Texas or the Royal Roads University. There's a lot of universities actually that have their own coaching certificate programs.
Thank you. Stephen asks, how would you price a group or corporate engagement?
Right, so those are two separate, well, maybe there's three questions there. So there is such a thing as group coaching, and I'm not sure if you're referring to that, but if you're doing team coaching or group coaching, the per hour fee is higher, right? Because you're actually coaching a whole team at once. So that is also a way to an individual who might want to experience coaching, you can sign up for a group coaching experience, and you're going through the coaching together with a cohort. For you're talking about corporate coaching, it depends a lot on how they want to design the program. There are right now quite a few, there's really, I would say, two main levels of coaching going on. There's the traditional executive coaching, which tends to be 15 to 30 hours of coaching, which might include interviews of key stakeholders, it includes assessments, and it's usually a year-long program. Those run anywhere from, at the low end, I would say 15,000 to 30,000, right? And those are usually for VPs or C-suite people, and those are very robust programs. But obviously, not every organization can afford that for all their employees. So there's been more recently shorter programs, which are more like 5 or 6 sessions, which are geared sometimes around a 360 tool, but it's usually online, not interviews. And it's usually focused in on just a handful of things they want to work on. So those shorter programs, may be in some cases as $3,000 to $5,000, depending on how many sessions, how long, and over what time frame. So it varies a lot depending on what you're trying to do, and also the volume. Obviously, if people are having you sign up for 200 employees, you can at some point give them a price break versus just one off kind of vice president that wanted coaching, but it was only a one-time, one client engagement.
And it looks like David asked, what do you think about Tony Robbins and his coaching school?
Well, I've not gone to Tony Robbins' program, so I can't really speak to it, but he's definitely one of the gurus, right? So he would fit into that guru program. You're learning from someone who has a famous name and would like that to, riding his coattails, so to speak, from a marketing perspective. So I would say that he fits into that category. I do not know much about his program, though, since I've not really investigated it. So I can't tell you, since I haven't been through it, can't speak from personal experience.
Okay. And what's the most unique insight or discovery you've had in your own coaching career?
Well, I think coaching itself is a transformational experience. So if you go to coaching school, a good coaching school will change who you are, right? In any kind of coaching program, if you stick with it and invest, your time and energy into it, will be transformative. So for me, I've had a bunch of these because I've been through not only the fielding program myself, but many other programs to learn different skills and different aspects of life. And one of my favorite things is appreciative inquiry, and I use it in all of my coaching programs. I think that is a life-changing process where you look more about what you want as opposed to what you don't want, and you're focusing on the future versus the past, and it's purposely positive as well, and can be used for your own development as well as changing a group or a team or a whole organization. So I've seen appreciative inquiry change my own perspective, and then really transform organizational cultures and my clients who have found it to be a really powerful technique for change.
Wow. Wonderful. And Debbie asks, as a coach working with individuals to come up with their own solutions, are you still able to provide advice when the participant requests if you think it would be helpful?
Yeah, so this is kind of $1 million question and controversial one, right? So ICF, with the International Coach Federation, they define coaching as not giving advice. So that's kind of their guideline, right? However, there are a lot of coaches that mix coaching with something else, right? So you might primarily do coaching, but do a little bit of mentoring. You might also do a little bit of consulting or a little bit of teaching. And even in the ICF says in their ethics that as long as you're not doing too much of that, which is subjective, admittedly, that it's probably okay, right? So if a client says, hey, I'd really like your opinion, certainly if you are open to sharing that, you could, but it's not coaching, right? You're moving into mentoring or teaching or consulting at that point. And it's just important for you to know that. And if you're doing it all the time, then you're probably not coaching, right? You're doing mentoring, and maybe should recontract for mentoring. And it's okay if you want to offer both mentoring and coaching, or mentoring and teaching. A lot of a lot of professionals have multiple hats they wear, and I do that. I'm also an organizational consultant, and at times I will do organizational consulting for a client. But I'm clear about that with them, and it's a different contract that I would have them sign and pay me for. But it's also one of those things where sometimes clients can have blind spots, right? Maybe they're a brand new leader and they really don't know what they don't know. So it might be important for you to share some wisdom or experience to get them going, or maybe offer them to, or suggest a book that they might want to read about a particular topic. The other thing you can do if the client is really stuck is brainstorm with them, right? To say, okay, I'm not going to tell you what to do here because that wouldn't be coaching, but let's just brainstorm, and I'll brainstorm with you. Let's look at what some options might be, but I want you to contribute to this list too. It's not me just giving you a long list, right? It's a collaborative exercise here. And that is appropriate, obviously, too, because you're helping them move forward. But doing that all the time would, again, probably be teaching or mentoring.
Right. Thank you. Leticia asks, from a business perspective, what are some of the obstacles you've had to overcome, and how did you go about them?
Well, I started my business in 2008. So any of you that are been around a while know that was the heart of the last recession before this one. And it was a tough time to start a business. And I was also finishing up my dissertation at that time, and writing a book, a popular book also. So I had a lot going on, right? So I think the biggest challenge for most coaches just getting started is marketing. And and marketing in a recession was certainly a challenge, but I was able to do it, and it just took a little bit longer, than it might be to start a business when there's a lot of money flowing and the economy is strong.
And Randy asks, what trends have you seen emerge in executives over the last decade? Sustainability, CSR, ethics, diversity? And have you ever had to fire a client? And if so, why?
So yeah, I think all those topics are trending, especially right now, probably more than in the last few years and 10 years ago. And then of course 10 years ago we're talking about the coming out of the recession, the last recession of 2008, 2009. So that was a hot topic then, is marketing and economic recovery. I think some of those things we'll be revisiting obviously now. But I think the big issues that are in the zeitgeist for everybody, like sustainability, climate change, what's the next phase of democracy going to look like? I think all these really big questions, conscious capitalism, are big questions that a lot of people are facing right now. Evolution of healthcare. I work with a lot of healthcare clients. What is value-based, care, and changing how people pay for healthcare is going to continue to be a huge challenge, not only for the healthcare industry, but for any organization that pays for healthcare for their employees or and others. So it's a really interesting times we live in, and there's a confluence of a lot of really big issues. Certainly inclusion, diversity, and equity will continue. That's always been a hot topic, but it's going to continue to be a hotter topic, I think, in the next few years. Globalization, continue to be a huge topic. Global supply chain management, and we'll see how that continues to evolve. And so I think that the second question, have I had to fire a client? I have fired clients, but most of the time it's one of those situations where they ghost me, right? Where they just get busy with other things. Their life gets overwhelming, and coaching is not one of their high priority items. And it's usually those folks that aren't paying, right? The HR is paying. They don't have any accountability from HR to even attend. So it's more of a kind of one of those check the box programs that HR has put in place, which can often be really great, but there's always a percentage of people who choose not to really commit to it, either because they have other priorities or they're just not that interested in personal development.
Right. Okay. And Medina asks, in which area do you think is the greatest need for coaches that currently exists?
The greatest need for coaches?
Yeah, which area?
Well, there's so many right now. Right? I would say that, coaching can help people in every aspect of their life, right? However, I'm a little bit biased in saying that leadership is a crisis today, right? We're going through a lot of change. We have always gone through change, but maybe not this much change, right? Every person on the planet is affected by COVID in one way or another. And that hasn't happened in 100 years, seriously. So this is unprecedented in any of our lifetimes. Anyone who was around back then is certainly, that remembers it, is probably dead, right? So we're talking about, this is unprecedented. And on top of that, we have an economic crisis, we have a climate crisis, we have a democratic crisis. So there's just so many crises on top of each other that are a huge issue. And coaching can help with all of those, right? There's a coach for every one of those areas that are really where we need to show more leadership.
Definitely. Linda asks, recently I've seen mentors set up GoFundMes for their mentees to help them out where mentors cannot. Do coaches ever go as far as that when helping their clients?
Well, I haven't seen the GoFundMe, but there is an organization now offering really, really low cost loans to people to get coaching. So it's a little bit like what you might take out a loan to get some kind of training or, a certificate. So I haven't seen a lot of people taking advantage of it, but it is a new program where people can get support that way. The other thing right now is quite a few coaches are offering pro bono coaching at different levels, especially for nonprofits or people who currently can't afford it, or going through some kind of personal crisis, like they've lost their job, or have healthcare issues, or there's a whole bunch of opportunities right now for people to receive coaching that may not believe they can afford it or have access to it, and they actually might.
And can you tell us a little bit more about your leadership book that you just finished writing?
Absolutely. So the book is called Innovations, with an S, Innovations in Leadership Coaching, Research and Practice. And the audience for this book are people who are either currently coaching or would like to become coaches, or leaders who would like to add coaching to their repertoire of skills. And it was written by 27 authors. It's over almost 500 pages of cutting edge theory and practice and research in the field of leadership coaching. So if you have any interest in that, either becoming a coach or learning about coaching or picking up some new skills, right? Some new skills and tools as a leader yourself, highly recommend checking it out. It is really affordable, only $10 on Amazon for Kindle. We purposely priced it low to make it accessible. and this is what it looks like. It's a blue book here on the video, and I see that Jamie posted it there in the chat room. So thank you for doing that.
Wow. Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to read it. What are the greatest results you've seen from working with clients?
Well, it's varied a lot, obviously, by whatever they brought to the table. But I've seen people, get promotions to vice president as a result of coaching, kind of working through the last areas of development that they needed to be qualified for their promotion. I've also saved one man's life through coaching. He hired me out of pocket, to coach him on a lot of things, including career development, dating, health and wellness. So even though he was a financial executive at a big healthcare company, and I did an assessment of kind of what was working in his life and what was not. We call it the wheel of life, but it looks at work and business and personal and financial. It looks at everything. And I pretty quickly determined he had not had a physical in 20 years. And I told him, I said, really? You work at a healthcare company and haven't had any blood work done in 20 years? And, he was, around 50, a little overweight. It was one of his goals was to lose weight. I also found out he had not saved a penny for retirement. At being a financial executive. So I told him, I said, first of all, I'm not leaving the office till you make the doctor's appointment.
Wow.
and he did. He made the doctor's appointment. Turned out his cholesterol was like over 300. He would have died for sure if he had not gone to coaching. And
Wow.
I also had him sign up for 401k matching for his company. So he actually has a retirement. I said, do you really want to be homeless when you retire? Because you have no savings and no assets whatsoever. He was still renting his house, his apartment. So I know I saved his life for sure. Or coaching saved his life. Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge.
Right.
And will you ever have an audiobook?
We talked about it. Audiobooks are an interesting thing because it's quite a big investment to actually produce them, because you have to hire someone to read the whole book and then publish it, etc. So at this point, we don't have plans to turn the innovations in leadership coaching to an audiobook. But I'm not saying it won't happen, but right now it's unlikely, just due to the investment required and then the amount of sales you would have to get to cover that investment. It is on Kindle though and hard copy, so we do have those two versions available.
Wonderful. And is there anything else you'd like to share?
Well, I invite you guys, if you've never experienced coaching, some of you, this may be brand new to you. In talking to Jennifer when we were preparing for this video, she asked me, she said, well, what call to action would you like for the group? And I said, well, I would be happy to offer people a free, no obligation 30-minute coaching session. So if this is something you'd like to experience, you can actually do a whole lot of work in 30 minutes. I know Jennifer's done a bunch of 30-minute sessions herself and has seen the power of it. Most of the time, coaching is a full hour, but I would be happy to meet with you. And I'm going to go ahead and plug this into the chat room now in case anyone might want to schedule that 30-minute meeting with me. And you don't have to do it, this month. If you're in the middle of other things, you can do it later if you like. You can also email me if you have any questions and would like to learn more. Feel free to connect with me. And then also on LinkedIn, I do invite everyone to connect with me on LinkedIn. I do post articles and blogs and videos on my LinkedIn account. So that's another great opportunity to connect and stay in touch longer term. So I just plug those into the chat room if anyone is interested.
Wow, thank you. I'm definitely going to take you up on that, even though I've already been coached by you. feel really powerful.
Thank you. I echo that appreciation.
Thank you very much.
And did anyone else have any questions for Terry?
Look at that, 5 o'clock on the dot. It is
Wow.
a perfect timing. So thank you. And so Terry, thank you so much for making that generous offer. I'm sure that there will be some of the students who will follow up with you. There was a question about the presentation, so we did record it, and Terry and Jennifer were both open to sharing that for all of our current students. Carol created a great place in Canvas for all of our corporate visits that we've been doing via Zoom. They're all in there, so you can go watch them at any time. And then we're also sharing the resources. So Terry, if you don't mind, if you want to share your deck with us, we can share that as well. And then Tiffany has been doing really great briefs on the companies that we're visiting, and those are all in there. So it's a great resource for students. If you're not a student or an alum and you don't have access to Canvas, reach out to one of us and we can get you that as soon as it's available. Thank you, Jennifer, for hosting. Thank you so much for Terry for presenting.
It's a pleasure to meet all of you, and thanks for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.